What's up? It is Sam here, and today I wanted to talk about three different things that keep coming up in the comment section. The first being that what we're doing here, what this movement actually is not representative of what's reality. And three of the arguments that come up are people who use the things that I look at, Google search volume, YouTube search volume, their website, etc., are all internet-based things, and that represents a young voter. And what these people tend to say in the comments is that the young people don't vote as much as old people. Okay, so we're going to touch on that. The next is that it's just the internet. Tying in with the first argument is that it's just the internet, but you know, what about the real world? Because the real world is how we've been doing this thing for decades and decades and decades, right? And this is not capturing any of that data. This is just based on the internet. So we're gonna get on that. And then the last is the sentiment. I'm not going to touch on this super heavily until I get to the last part of the video where we get into the comment section. So if you leave a hashtag STOLT in the comment section down below, then I search for these in my YouTube analytics and I talk about them in the end of the video. So with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you that are returning, what do you think of the mustache? I just shaved. So anyways, it's good to freaking see you. Well, let's get into it. So I'm going to touch on some topics, some highlights from this paper that came out in terms of the changing economics and demographics of the adult population, 75 to 2016, by Jonathan Vespar in 2017. You can go Google that shit if you're interested. Okay, so some of the highlights in this paper come out. We're going to touch on these, and then we're going to talk about them before we actually dive into all of the data. So the first one here, we're just going to start out, is more young people today live in their parents' home than any other arrangement. 1 in 3 young people, or about 24 million 18 to 34-year-olds, lived in their parents' home in 2015. So why am I talking about this when I just talked about those other three things? Well, think about the third of people between 18 to 34 and the psychology that's going on up here, where I don't mind living at home. If my parents lived around here and they didn't care, I would move home, right? I'll just do my own thing. Just leave me the fuck alone. I want to do my own thing, right? But I'm also in a different spot mentally than a lot of people. Clearly, you see this fucking mustache. So I think that a lot of that 1/3 of the population who stays at home between the ages of 18 to 34 may potentially feel that the internet and what is happening in the world today is the future. They could also feel a little bit of like bad sentiment towards how things had been done, because for them, they may also think that the economy really isn't working for them, and they might want to change. I don't know. Let's take a look at the data in a second. In 2005, the majority of young adults lived independently in their own houses, which was the predominant living arrangement in 35 states. A decade later, by 2015, the number of states where the majority of young people lived independently fell to just 6. Meaning 6 states, I believe, is what they're talking about. This goes in perfectly with what we're talking about. Is there's that titanic shift that has either taken place, is taking place, or is about to take place. I'm in the camp that we're in that moment, or it has already happened, where there's a substantial part of the population who the economy is not working very well for. It's just what it is. A lot of my friends don't have any fucking money to do anything, right? There's been sold this idea where we don't even talk about fucking saving money or doing things intelligently, right? That's not what the media talks about. And when you have, and I would bet that a lot of these people would probably enjoy buying their own house. Not in my camp. Like, I don't ever want to buy a house for myself. I don't want to deal with the fucking headache of all that shit. I'd much rather rent. I'll buy a house as an investment. Sure. No problem at all. I'll definitely do that if it's going to pay me. But I have no intention of buying a house to live in. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So there's part of that in this number, but I would guess that my thinking is probably a very small sliver of that type of thinking. But there's this giant shift happening where the internet is the thing more than the physical world that's out there, right? I don't know. I think we're in that moment. It might take 6 years to play out. I don't know, but it's happening, right? The next one here is more young men are falling to the bottom of the income ladder. In 1975, only 25% of men aged 25 to 34 had incomes of less than $30,000 per year. By 2016, that share rose to 41% of young men in 2015 dollars. That's probably impacted these gentlemen between, like, think about this. If you're between the ages of 25 and 34, and you had that fire inside of you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that you were going to set the world on fire with the impact that you could create around you. Maybe you didn't have that belief. Maybe you do. I don't know. And you're 25 and you've been working for 2 or 3 or 4 years and you're still making less than 30 grand. And the story that you believe to be true isn't true. And I would bet that that's probably a little disheartening to some people in that age group or many other age groups who aren't making or doing what they want to be doing. Between 1975 and 2016, the share of young women who were homemakers fell 43 to 14 between the ages of 25 and 34. Yes, this goes right in line with that. I was just saying there's a ridiculous shift that is taking place now where this is such an exciting time to be alive, because in 10 years, in 15 years, this is going to be unrecognizable, what we're currently doing today. It's going to be another era. Look at the last 15 years. And we're just now getting on the internet at scale. To not think that in 15 years, the way we're currently doing things is going to be retardedly antiquated in some of the aspects, right? Being kind, helping, and caring for people. I don't think that's going away. I'm talking about the processes that human beings have put in place around these legacy ways of doing things. 43% of women weren't working in 1975. They were homemakers. 2016, 14. There's a shift in the individual about what is important to them. And that could be twofold, right? It could be explained by a multitude of other things, but the cost of living first is retardedly high across America. I'm probably going to be moving outside of the United States and potentially giving up my citizenship in 7 to 10 years is the idea. Because if I can get a lot more of my money, I can invest it way more intelligently than paying taxes and letting the U.S. government invest my money. Doesn't make any fucking sense. And you can see it playing out in the data, right? 43% to 14%. There's a shitload of more women, smart, intelligent, hardworking women with all these amazing ideas that were held back by the way that they believed that they had to be in the home or discriminated against. Now they're out in the workforce and they're contributing to the acceleration of these ideas and proliferation of these companies across the globe. It's actually super transformative, and it's really going to be impactful over this next several decades, but also the amount of impact that you guys are going to see is going to be retarded. And I apologize that I keep using that word. Need to use a different word. I apologize to anybody who does not like me using that word. I'm get better at that. Okay, so right here we have the citizen voting age population turnout rates by race and ethnicity. So what we're going to do is we're just going to compare some of the troughs and some of the peaks to the prior years. So we're going to start these peaks right here, and this is the non-Hispanic black And this is in 2008 had a peak, then it came down a little bit, and then it came down again in 2016. So what we're looking at as peaks and troughs is general election versus the non-general election, whatever that's called. I don't remember. But every other year when there's not an election. And we can see that there's a downward trend here on that level in that group. Let's look at blue. It looks like there was a downward trend, and then they started to come up. Purple, all right, this is the other segment of the population that is not broken down as non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, and Hispanic. This is the other group. It looks like there was down, and then it started to flatten out or come up. Let's look at green. Green, again, has the same trend. So the only one that's continued to go down, it looks like, is red in that group, right? Meaning that the trend of decreasing the amount of people who were participating in the vote for voting are that's shifted to an increase in participation rate. And you're like, well, it's only 3 data points, but it's over the course of 10 plus years. And then we can also take a look at, this goes over much, much longer time period, right? This is the every other year, every 2 years voting. Again, we'll start at the red here. We see that red actually has the highest turnout. So this is the 2018 elections. Has the highest turnout out of any other one, any other trough, right? That's the every other election year type thing. And the highest it's ever been. Okay. 2018 for non-Hispanic whites. What? Same thing happens. The highest trough it's ever been. Okay, well, maybe it's just those two. Let's check out other, again, other, same exact thing, right? They're up by this line here. No other trough is even near that line. Green, which is Hispanic. Again, so much more hard participation. So people are increasing, right? Their participation in the involvement of what is happening in this country. You can see that playing out. What I'm talking about with the internet, I believe, is impacting that because people are getting the actual information. It's not distorted through a legacy media player who's talking about like just their biases. Check out the video I just did on MSNBC, like, and are they stonewalling Andrew Yang or not? Like, there's plenty of data that shows one way or the other. You guys get to decide. I'm just going to show you the data. Now let's come down here to this is just non-Hispanic white share electorals, and we're not getting into that, but we're going to touch on age, right? Because one of the things that always comes up is young versus old. Old people participate way more. So let's see if that's substantiated by the data. So again, we're going to do the same thing we did. We're going to look at 60 plus at each one of those general election versus the other election, right? And don't blow up too hard not knowing what that other election is called in the comment section. But if you do, use hashtag stole so that I can talk about it at the end of the video. So this trough here, or let's start at the peak again. And this is 60 plus. 60 plus looks like it's about the same, maybe slightly increasing if you go back, right? If you go back all the way to 1996, so basically for the last 20 years, it looks like the participation rate in the age group of 60 plus is increasing very marginally year over year with a slight flattening over the last 8 years or so, from 2012 to 2000 right now. Because these are pretty flat. So it does seem like it's been flattening out a little bit. But let's look at the trough, right? So this is 2018, after the 2016 election. And their trough, and then, I think it's called midterm elections, right? Is that, yeah. Somebody's already probably left a mean comment below. But the midterm election is substantially higher than every other year on record back to 1984. Interesting. Let's take a look at 45 to 59. Again, peak. It looks like there's actually been a downward trend, right? Can't see this data point here, but it looks like it could have been all the way back from 2004. So 16 years, roughly 15 years. It looks like it was like, I'm peaking out, and then it's had a downward trend. But let's look at the trough here for the midterm. Again, the midterm is like the highest it's ever been in terms of participation in that age group. People are seeing things online from their friends and just the actual news, not just some fucking MSNBC or CBS or Fox. Like, if somebody wants to get their message out, you're watching this on fucking YouTube, coming right from me. It's not filtered through somebody else. I don't have to like do something because I'm trying to sell you this. Next, let's look at the age group of 30 to 44. We see like a peaking around the same time as some of these other ones around 2008, and then we see it start to come down, and it starts to level out here. So we're getting a trend here, right? Possibly that it looks like a bunch of the things could kind of maybe slightly coming down, and they're either flattening out or starting to come back up. But let's look at the midterm, right? This is the most recent data, in my opinion, the most relevant. Holy fuck, right? We have a gigantic increase from here to here in terms of participation, where it had been peaked out again around 2006, 2008, and it looked like it was coming down. And now we have a reversal of that trend. Same thing here. Let's look at this. We have a reversal of the trend right here. It had been coming down since 2008. It looks like it peaked, just like a lot of the other ones peaked around 2008, and starts coming down, and it starts to pick back up. Look at this, the highest midterm participation among 18 to 29-year-olds, higher than the peak back in 1996. This is at the general election. So more people participated, or about the same amount of people participated in the 2018 midterm election as they did in 1996 for the general election. So we're seeing some serious stuff happen here that nobody else wants to talk about. So in regards to that, people think that young people are not voting, but we can see that they clearly are. But let's also consider the size of what's happening in terms of the population by demographic group segmentation. So what we have here is that the greatest generation, interesting name, and this was before 1928, represents about 2% of the voting population, or I'm sorry, 2 million people. I apologize, 2 million people. The silent generation, which is 28 to 45 years, 28 to 45, 1928 to 1945, I apologize. And they have about 24 million. The baby boomers are about 72 million. So if you look at this group right here, because we're going to remember these numbers, because we're going to get into them more in a second. But this group right here is right around 100 million, right? Because you take 72 plus 24 is 96. Plus 2 more is 98, plus if you round up on a lot of these, this puts them about 100 million. But let's look at this. Generation X, the millennials, and Generation Z. These three groups here, in terms of voting population, or in terms of, I'm sorry, the total population here, we have almost three times greater in terms of the total amount of way more than 3 times greater. Right? So we have 72, or no, but anyways, it's a doubling or tripling of this number, the details of it. So if you think about it, where might people in Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z spend their time? On the internet? Do you think that they spend more time on their internet than the boomers and the generations older than the boomers? I don't know, that's what it looks like, but maybe we can have some actual data to support that. Also, this is just super interesting to me. The median age of the total population right here has been increasing, so that would be expected, right, as people live longer. But that's the median age. The median age is the middlemost number in the data set. So there's 50% of the data points that are greater than that, and there's 50% of the data points that are less than that. It just kind of shows how things are shifting, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Generation Z starts to actually pull that. Actually, no, it's going to continue to increase with age. But let's go over to the share of U.S. And you can see the websites I'm pulling these from. This is from Statistica. This is the share of adults in the United States who used the internet in 2019 by age group. Look at that, 100% of people 18 to 29, 97% of people between 30 and 50. So when you look at this, I don't know, that seems to be aligned with what our polling is, what our rankings are on this channel. When we do Google search volume, that's representing this age group. And this is still 88% of people who use the internet. Do you think that it's possible that these two age groups, 50 and older basically, use the internet to a great deal? Yeah, that's what the data says, right? 75% for 65 and older, 88% of people that are between the ages of 50 and 64. So when you use Google, the #1 site in the fucking planet, and you look at the search volume, and you stack rank the candidates in each one of these things, you're getting a pretty good representation of the collective of the American public of what they're actually interested in. Because that's where they're spending their time, on the internet. The last thing I want to touch on, which is the most important, I feel like, and this is from Pew Research. This is the younger generations outvoted boomers in prior generations in 2018. And we've already touched on this, but this just aggregates it nicely and puts it together in a little chart that's super impactful. We saw this, right? We saw these trends here, that there was a giant increase in the 2018 election. But when you add up Generation Z, millennials, and Generation X, so this is big. If you think about that, that's basically age 54 and younger and 54 and older, or 53 and younger and 54 and older, whatever you want to say it. Look at the gigantic increase in the bottom here. But we already saw some of this stuff, right? We already know that they're substantially larger than boomers and older. And that was 2018. This is the very end of 2019. And the world is a completely different place in terms of how people get their information. So this is just the beginning of a larger trend, and I think that 2020 is going to be the most interesting year to actually pay attention to politics in the history of the world, because there's such a diversity of opinion and more people can get their messages out. This is just a broken down. We can see that by every single demo here, they all increased. Look at how much the millennials increased. Generation Z, which is I think 30 and younger basically, they had 30% participating. Is that right? Percentage of eligible voters who reported voting in midterm elections. So they are already participating at a higher rate than millennials were from 2006 to 2014. That's pretty crazy. Interesting. And then this last bit here, I just wanted to throw this in. This is Gen Zers and millennials. So this is like 38-ish, right? Just that median number, right? If we go back to here, 38. The Gen Zs and millennials cast a quarter of all votes in 2018 midterm election. So that means 25% of the total vote is coming from people that are based, I don't know, what's the top end of millennials? I'm a millennial. I think it's like 1980, and I was born in 84, so if you add 4 years to my age, that'd be 38. That's why I said that, but I didn't actually look at the exact breakdown of what it might be, but very, very close to the median age of the population. And in 2018, they represented 25% of the total vote, right? Now, we saw the shifts happening across the board. So I'm putting all this together to show that the overall picture of what's happening in the US when it comes to young versus old, and the voting participation of young versus old, and the impact of the internet and what's happening are really super fucking tremendous. And when it comes to sentiment, the amount of attention somebody has, good or bad, however you want to define it, is another opportunity at bat to tell your story, tell your message. So when somebody has a giant increase in attention, they have more opportunity to tell their story. And if they're good, what they're going to do is have a big increase in terms of a new set point after that spike in attention. And we can see some of this playing out in the data that we're tracking. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below in the comments. If you use the hashtag Stolt, then when I go over to my YouTube analytics, I can actually search for hashtag Stolt, and we get to talk about the comments. Because there's really some awesome gold on there if you guys get into the comment section and you read through it. This is from Rhythm and Acoustics. What's good? Nice stuff. But I think, like Sturk's like, this is awesome. So this is likes, dislikes. So he is referencing the sentiment that we just spoke about, because lots of clicks are baits, blah, 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 midterm. So we actually just talked about this. I really do thank you for the comment. I think that that would be another interesting dynamic. He is also referencing views are more important, or views are maybe less important than the viewer retention, likes and dislikes rate, and the watch duration than views. I think understanding the sentiment could be interesting, but it can also get really, really cloudy. Meaning not necessarily super representative of what the collective is thinking. I would potentially like to add some of these things like the likes and dislikes into some of the rankings that I do around the awareness, if you want to check out the channel for that. But I don't know. We'll see. Let's play around with it and start adding them in and see if that has any type of predictive value. I've got some interesting research coming out where I'm actually going to test what we're doing. So I could be completely wrong, but we're going to take a look at this, and I'll let you guys know for the 2016 election. So make sure you press a thumbs up for that. This next comment is from Mr. Ram Omnishell Alfoof. Apologize, brother. Enunciation is not super strong for me, it looks like. What actually happened with Tulsi is that she became ill for almost 2 weeks, so she wasn't as active. That's interesting. I wonder when that was, because I have seen her slip a little bit, so I bet that probably impacted her numbers, because if she's not telling her message to more and more people, she's going to lose ground. If everybody else is trying to get their message out to people, she's going to lose momentum and lose ground. Time goes on. The next is from Robert Corva. Let me try this again. Kova Rubias. What's good? Excellent analysis, Stolt. You are right about concerning Tulsi Gabbard. She will continue to gain ground. She's getting attention. She will definitely gain. Besides, she's extremely intelligent. She knows how to operate real data to her advantage. I don't know. It would be super interesting to see if she continues to gain ground. I did not include her when we actually first started these rankings, because she was not in the election. I don't follow politics at all. I don't pay attention to what any of these candidates say. I have no context for the policies or things that they talk about, because I don't pay attention. I don't read, I don't watch, I don't listen to what any of these people think. What I'm interested in is understanding the collective of America and what they think. Because understanding the collective of America, I get the answer. I don't have to say like, oh, this person's so good, blah, 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 blah. This person's fucking even better. I don't have to get into that conversation, because I can just look at the data. It is what it is. I live in reality. I'm just going to talk about the data, because that's real. Like, my opinion on this person or my opinion on this person is super fucking subjective. Once I can just see what the collective America thinks, then I have my answer. I don't need to fucking decide that. I just want to understand what everybody else is going on. So I actually have no fucking idea what is happening with these candidates. I do appreciate your time, and don't forget to jump over to Instagram and say what's good, or TikTok. TikTok has been blowing up. I have some really good content coming out where I'm actually tracking the total number of views across platforms as my gauge to measure success instead of using sales, because just quit my job. I'm not selling anything. I don't have any services. I'm trying to figure out a way to make a living online. So I'm going to be talking about that probably weekly. So don't forget to subscribe if you want to support the channel. All the way. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this sick fucking stash.